Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? So, I thought we'd take a little look at the Xbox Developer Direct that went out last night. So, yeah, a little bit of a reaction type thing, but we're going to try and keep this more or less on point and sort of focus on the stuff that's most related to this channel and the things I'm most interested in. So, on the whole, 4 out of 5 of the games that I'm interested in, or, well, 3 out of 5, something to that effect. So, not a bad rate of success for me, but interested in seeing what they've got coming over the year. Obviously, this is just the releases via the Xbox series of studios, and particularly via Game Pass this year. So, some cool stuff, some stuff that I'm not particularly interested in, and yeah, we'll dive in. So, as I say, going to focus on things that most interest me, and we'll sort of skip a little bit over the other stuff. But if you want to see everything, the whole showcase and everything, I'll link it in the description so you can check out the full 45-ish minute presentation there, which is quite cool. There's definitely some interesting stuff in there, for sure. So, first up, game number 1. Let's dive in. Is Avowed, which is coming from Obsidian. So, those of you who've been around for a while, particularly around the streams for a while, will be aware that I have a complicated, shall we say, relationship with Obsidian games. I really want to like them, but I generally come down on being either disappointed or finding them to be the least good entry in an existing series. So, yeah, my success rate so far is not spectacular, but I keep giving them a chance, and I'm going to do that again with Avowed, and there's definitely some things that look quite interesting, quite cool, and I'm cautiously optimistic about Avowed, so definitely going to give it a go. It's going to be on Game Pass, so for me and anybody else who already subscribes to Game Pass, if it turns out it's not for you, well, you haven't spent anything that you weren't going to spend in the first place, so that's always a win with Game Pass. So, yeah, going to be somewhat Skyrim-esque, I think might be a good way of putting it, in that it's a first-person, single-character, single-player-focused, action-centric RPG. So that's cool. It's going to have a lot of the stuff that Obsidian do with sort of choices and grey areas, you know, not black and white and what's good and bad, stuff like that. We'll see. Sometimes they get a lot more credit for that stuff than I think perhaps is entirely deserved. I don't think they always pull it off as well as a lot of people seem to think they do. But we'll see. Give it a shot. It looks pretty. That was the first thing that struck me, which is going to be true for quite a few of these games, actually. There's some really pretty, really colourful-looking games. Not all of them, but a lot of them do look very colourful. Avowed is definitely one of those. It's got quite a saturated look to the colour scheme, and it works in this case. I think it looks pretty nice. Definitely looking forward to checking that out. It reminds me a little bit of, visually, in terms of the environments and the way objects are placed within the environment. For example, there's a shot of a corpse with a couple of spears coming out of it. Some of that's very Skyrim, some of it's a little bit ESO, and there's something else it reminds me of as well that I can't put my finger on visually, just purely visually. Not sure what that is, but it's interesting. It's a sort of setup for a quest as well, with that corpse with spears sticking out of it. There's something in the back of my brain that this is triggering, but I can't think what it is. Nonetheless, interesting. They did a big look at combat with this. It was one of the things they were focused on more than anything else, which makes sense in this sort of a game. It looks interesting. They do seem to be trying to do something new with that kind of formula and build upon it, so you're able to switch relatively rapidly between loadouts. So the idea being that you can sort of start at a distance and pelt something with magic via your wand, which is somewhat Harry Potter style. Not my personal favourite style of magic delivery. I'm more of a staff than a wand type person. There we go. Nonetheless, quite cool, quite an interesting thing. There's some really cool stuff in the animations, particularly around the wand stuff, where you see an enemy coming at you, and he puts his shield up to try and protect him. The character kind of steps back, whips the arm up, so the wand goes up into the air and takes a shot down that goes over the top of the shield and hits the target behind it. And I thought that was a really sweet little moment. So just I suspect it's an animation thing. But as far as that goes with the sort of developing around shields and that kind of traditional melee combat that you see in fantasy games and historical-based games, that was a really cool little tip. Normally you see you use a heavy attack to bash through somebody's block, which is basic and relatively simple, and not surprising that they went that way historically because it was easier to develop. But working around shields and movements like that was a really, really cool thing to see, so hopefully there'll be a lot more stuff like that in there. That was something that really caught my eye and impressed me. You've got pistols in there, you've got sword and shield, you've got two-handed weapons, and you can switch them up in order to do different types of attacks and styles and stuff, and that was quite cool. The one thing that I was unsure about is it looked a little bit jerky. There wasn't a lot of flow and fluidity to the combat. Whether or not that's just the footage they used or it's the actual vibe of it, I don't know. I mean, there's an element of realism to that, but it didn't look quite as smooth as it might potentially have done. May or may not be a negative when you're actually playing the game. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, definitely going to give that one a go. They also talked about the questing and the conversation side of things and your choices in quests having consequence on down the line. A lot of people talk about this. Very few actually pull it off. So we'll see. Hopefully they do. But it looked like an interesting concept. Some of the dialogue, particularly around there, did strike me as a bit odd. The characters you were talking to, nobody ever in the history of humanity has ever spoken like that. So it's that Star Wars dialogue thing, you know, where the actors had the issues with the lines they were being asked to deliver, particularly in the first movie, all way back when. But it had that kind of vibe to it. I was just like, okay. Not in a kind of experience-breaking kind of a way, but nonetheless, it did make me go, okay, I think I can get through that. But we'll see what happens. I'm definitely looking forward to trying that one out when the game launches, and we have, as you can imagine, with this particular event, that's kind of the point, a release window of autumn 2024, so late August through to mid-November, something like that. I'm guessing probably October. Seems likely. Late September, October. Assuming there's no delays or anything like that. But that's cool. Definitely looking forward to trying that out in the latter part of the year. My schedule is a little bit more amorphous back there, so I think we'll be able to fit that in. So, game number two is one that I have been really excited for. That is Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. We played Senua's Sacrifice on the channel a while ago. Really, really enjoyed it. Short game. Really, really intense. Cool. The way it handled the mental health stuff that it was talking about was really, really good. Really, really intriguing. The use of binaural audio was amazing. And it looks like they're taking that idea and building on it and making it more complex and advanced and interesting and dynamic for Hellblade 2, which is cool. So one of the, I don't exactly want to say complaints, but things, should we say, about Hellblade 1 is also going to be coming back for 2, and that is that the game is going to be short. It sounds like it's going to be the 8 to 10 hour mark again, which the first one was as well. Normally, I'm a little bit not too keen on that, particularly when you get a full price game with a very, very short runtime on it, because it feels like you're often not quite getting your money's worth out of it. The previous game, I kind of didn't get that vibe so much because of the intensity of the experience and how iconic in a way it was, and the impact it made and the impression it left. It was really, really cool, so I would have liked it to be longer, more for the sake that I wanted to keep playing than for feeling like you get your money's worth. So if they do that again with this one, I'll be okay with that. Mostly. But the other side of that, of course, is Game Pass, which obviously applies to all of these. If you've got Game Pass already, then you can play it through Game Pass. You're not spending any money you weren't spending in the first place, so value for money is kind of much less of a consideration about that point. So yeah, that's cool. But it looks absolutely brilliant. Visually, it's the same style it was before, the kind of supernatural magical stuff overlaid on the Celtic Viking historical world set in Iceland, but it'll be very dark, lots of skulls and bones on strings and stuff hanging around to get that Senua's vibe from the previous Hellblade, so looking very, very cool, but with the graphical fidelity again turned up another level. Hellblade 1 is a respectably demanding game for its time period, so I do shudder a little bit to think what Hellblade 2's system requirements might be like for those of us particularly on PC. It is going to be an Xbox game and a console release, so that should mean it won't be horrifically overly demanding, given the limitations of the console generation. But, it's we'll have to wait and see. I'm a little bit apprehensive about that. It does look immensely cool, though. The story sort of set up so far looks interesting. With the first game, it was much more Senua's journey into sort of the Norse underworld. So it was kind of not in the real world, although it kind of was at the same time. This one kind of leans the pendulum the other way a little bit, where it's more based in the real world, but there's still fantastical elements. There's giants and Drauga and stuff like that going to be in it. So how are they going to blend that with the leaning slightly more towards the real world or real world Iceland, as opposed to the leaning more towards not real world that the previous game had, will be an interesting thing to explore and see how they pull that off. They seem to have upgraded combat, or they say they have. In the first game, it was relatively simplistic. It worked well. It was fun. But certainly by the end of the game, you had it down. You had the vibe of it, and it was a little on the repetitive side. There wasn't as much it wasn't as dynamic as it could have been. And it looks like they've overhauled it, made it a lot more story-based, which is interesting, and dynamic, hopefully, and more involved than perhaps it was. I don't think it's going to be the most complex combat system in the world again, because it just doesn't seem to fit with the kind of game that they want to make and the stories they want to tell. But it does look like it should be very, very interesting and gritty and, really like into the moment of fighting somebody with, fighting for your life with a sword, which is the vibe they're going for, and it looks very, very cool. Audio design was a massive thing with the previous game, and it is going to be with this one. They've got Xion, an amazingly atmospheric, eerie kind of Celtic Norse type band in the real world, who are contributing to the score. And obviously they've got a really kind of eerie, creepy, atmospheric sound set up. The binaural audio is back, this time not just for the voices that Senua hears, but also for a lot more environmental and music as well, those sorts of sounds. So that's going to make this whole thing like crazy immersive if you've got the headphones on, which you should really have been doing for the first game, absolutely. And for the second one, it seems like it's going to be even more true. So it looks like it's taking everything they did so well in the first game and building on it for the second. So I am very, very excited to play this one. And it's going to be right up my alley. In fact, as soon as I finish recording this video, I'm going to send some messages to people who I know enjoyed the last one and say, here, look at this. So yeah, that should be cool. And we have a date on this one. This is the first one we'll be playing because it's coming out in May. The 21st of May, this one will be dropping. So definitely looking forward to that. I'm very, very excited. So, just a quick touch on this next game, and that is Ara History Untold. It's another one of the games announced here at the Xbox Developer Direct, or not so much announced as updated. It is a 4X kind of strategy game in the vein of Civilization, and from the sound of things, a lot of the devs have worked on the Civilization games in the past, and other 4X strategy games as well. So, you are a ruler who strategically builds up a civilization from the Stone Age all the way through to the Space Age kind of vibe. And it looks like they are trying to put a new spin on this, developing it, and it looks quite complex. But they're saying it should be approachable. We'll see. This is really not my sort of game, to be honest. I've played bits of them in the past, but it really doesn't inspire me or draw me in that much. So, it looks colourful and interesting. It looks very, very pretty. It looks quite detailed and kind of complex in some ways, which is, those kind of systems are what a lot of people who play these sort of games are interested in. It's got a crafting system, apparently, on a national scale that looks quite intriguing, so I can see that having a lot of appeal to people who like these games. But yeah, not entirely my thing, but definitely looks like they're trying to put an interesting spin on a long-standing and very popular genre of game. So if you are interested in that thing, Ara History Untold is something maybe you want to check out, have a little gander at that. So you can have a look at all of these again in the Developer Direct, which I'll link down below. And this one's due out in late 2024, so autumn to early winter, possibly a Christmas release window. We'll see. But later on in the year, if you're into that sort of thing. So, another game that I am not particularly interested in myself, but again, if you are, then this might be your thing, is Visions of Mana. So this, interestingly, is not really an in-house Xbox thing, as the rest of them are. This is an external one that's being released on Xbox and through Game Pass, because it is a Square Enix game. So, personally, not really that into the things that Square Enix do. The type of games they make are just not my cup of tea. It's fine. I have issues with them as a publisher as well, but that's a whole other thing. So yeah, essentially it's a newest entry into a very long-running series. Been around since, I believe I saw 1991 pop up on there. Leaning into action-adventure kind of thing. There's a very, very Japanese kind of style to it, that sort of art style and sensibility, which is not terribly surprising from a Japanese company, really, is it? And there's a little bit of like JRPG meets action with kind of little Pokemon vibes in there as well, almost in the art style and creature design and stuff like that. It's that same kind of sensibility to it. So if that sounds like your sort of thing, then you can absolutely check it out. Not my sort of thing really, but it looked colourful and kind of fun for people who do like that sort of thing. And it is lined up for the summer. No specific release date yet, but I imagine it can't be terribly long until they're going to give us one, seeing as summer is 6 months, I suppose, but that'll disappear all too quickly, of course. And with some of these obscure dates that are not particularly clear, we've got a couple of late 2024s, we've got an autumn, and we've got a summer. I'm guessing they're not 100% certain they're going to hit a date, so that's probably why they're keeping it vague. So we'll see if all of these actually do come out this year, but who knows? So, last game on the list to check out is Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which the name of got out a little bit early, so that was the whole thing. But yeah, looks interesting. It's been developed by Machine Games, and the executive producer is Todd Howard of BGS and Fallout and Elder Scrolls fame. So yeah, looks interesting. Apparently Todd Howard is a long time Indiana Jones fan. It's his favourite movie series. Fair enough. And he's wanted to make a game in that series for a long time too, and has now done so in conjunction with Machine Games over in Sweden. So Machine Games are the developers of the Wolfenstein series these days, and the rebooted one, and they did a pretty cool job on that. I suspect the fact that you are shooting Nazis might have had something to do with why Wolfenstein developer got hold of this particular game, because, you know, guess who the bad guys are in Indiana Jones games? Yeah, exactly. But that's fine. There's a whole thing with Bethesda as a larger, well, the ZeniMax family of games, and shooting Nazis. They do seem to be into that. Hard to complain, really. So apparently it is a new story, completely original story, that is set somewhere in between the movies, so between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. So in that sort of time frame, that period of Indy's life, he is sort of peak of his life, working at the university, goes out and has the adventures that he has. So I would say that must be, 1930s-ish. Sounds about right. It looks cool. The concept art for it was really, really cool. I was very, very struck by that. That really caught my eye during the showcase and the presentation. One thing I'm a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, weirded out maybe, about is the character models and design. I feel like the character model design is not the same as the art direction and design for the game world. So they look a little bit odd. It makes them stand out from the background, which is always good, but it also means they don't quite look like they belong to my eye. Your mileage may vary, but that's an interesting thing. The art style, particularly for the characters, not so much for the world, but for the characters, it particularly struck me that it reminded me of a style of art that was popular a couple of console generations ago. So around about the PS3 era, which is not to say that it looks like it was developed then. It doesn't. It looks like it's current gen, but it's got a style, an artistic design sensibility that was popular in that era around the character models, which is interesting. Some of the facial animations are a bit odd, some of the lip syncing's a bit weird, and that's definitely, I mean, we normally point that criticism in the direction of BGS, which, given that Todd Howard is the executive producer, is a little bit head-scratchy, but, yeah, he's not doing the animations, so coincidence, I guess, but it's a bit odd to me. That said, it doesn't look like it'll pull you out. The whole thing is trying to capture this Indiana Jones franchise and movies vibe in video game form, and hopefully they'll do that. There's little bits of Uncharted vibes in there. There's little bits around the kind of side puzzles and stuff like that make me think rebooted Tomb Raider from the last decade, the 20-teens. So there's some interesting stuff they're drawing on there. Mixture of first person and third person, primarily first person, but, you know, iconic silhouettes of Indy and stuff are being thrown in there as well. They're leaning into a lot of that iconic stuff from the franchise, like Indiana Jones' use of the whip, and not just being a shooter or an exploration thing or anything like that. It's supposed to be more thought-provoking, you know. You solve problems in multiple ways and in creative ways, not just shoot a guy or something. You can use your whip, or you can try and come up with stealthy ways around, things like that. So drawing on a lot of that kind of almost arcane-esque multiple ways to solve a problem, which could potentially be very cool. It looks like they're doing a pretty good job of capturing the vibe of an Indiana Jones setting and series as a game, but not quite. There are bits where I'm just like, it's a little bit off. I'm 99% sure that the voice actor is not Harrison Ford, not least of all because he would be extremely expensive, I'm sure. But the actor who has done it sounds younger than Harrison Ford now does. But it does sound like he's done a pretty good job, but you can kind of tell it's not the original actor. So there's little things along those lines here and there that make it kind of feel a little bit like they haven't quite hit the nail on the head with the vibe of Indiana Jones. But I don't think it's going to stop me enjoying the experience either. I think it's going to be a fun game, so I'm looking forward to checking that out. Yeah, as for a release date, this one is another one with a release window, which is late 2024, so run up to Christmas, I assume, at the end of the year. Again, this is another one where it feels like maybe they've kept it a little open-ended just in case it does get pushed back into 2025. That said, the first trailer I could find for it came out in 2021, which is not as recent as I thought it was, so that's it kind of lines up with the game being about ready now, given the timescales for most game development cycles and stuff, so hopefully they'll hit that window, but it may end up getting pushed till early next year. We'll have to see. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to jumping in and trying this interesting take on a series that we've not seen a great deal from outside of some iffy movies in quite a long time, so fingers crossed this could be quite interesting. So there we go. There's my thoughts, reactions, and feelings about the Xbox Developer Direct. Would have liked to have seen some commentary on, say, the DLC for Starfield coming out, because some of that should be coming out this year. There was nothing in there. We kind of knew that they weren't including that because they told us what was going to be in the Developer Direct before it happened. But nonetheless, I would have liked some heads up on that. There's also Fallout 4's next-gen update, which is due this year, and there was nothing about that in there. Again, not surprising. They kind of told us it wasn't going to be in there. But it was an opportunity to share it for whatever reason they haven't done. Maybe it's a little bit more ambiguous as to whether or not they'll hit this year's window. The other thing is this is focused on new game releases, not additions to existing games. So that might have something to do with it as well. There's no DLC announcements here. Although, speaking of kind of additions and DLC stuff, obviously this was followed on by the ESO showcase, which had its own thing afterwards. Again, not a game that I'm into particularly, so if you want to check it out, on Bethesda's YouTube channel is a good place to find that, and you can see what's happening about ESO for the year ahead, if you happen to miss it first time around last night. So, there we go. Hope you guys found that interesting and got something useful out of my thoughts and impressions regarding these games. Hope you guys are excited for them. Always good to be excited about new games. And I hope you guys are looking forward to hanging out, particularly on stream, which I think most of this stuff will be stream-based content. So, yeah, do keep an eye out for the live streams, and I hope you'll join us for these games when they drop. In the meantime, of course, Fallout streams ongoing, Fallout videos ongoing. Starfield streams are, well, we've got a little bit left on the game, so do drop in for those if you get a chance as well as Fallout and Starfield builds, and a whole bunch of upcoming stuff as well for streams and builds and things like that. There's quite a sizable chunk of survival and base building type stuff that looks really, really interesting to me coming out over the next few months, as well as some other games as well. So I'll link somewhere around my channel update for you, because that's covering a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in, hopefully squeezing into schedule this year and having a look at, because there's some really cool stuff. Some of it new, some of it from last year, some of it from further back. That hopefully we'll have a nice packed schedule with a lot of interesting and fun stuff to check out and hang out and enjoy. So I do hope you join us for it. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Hit all those buttons and things that YouTubers always ask you to do, you know, all that good stuff. And I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.